As we begin this session, I want to remind you that these skills are meant to help us grow as followers of Christ. Look at the graphic in your workbook that shows how each skill enables us to both receive the love of God and give the love of God. In our last session, we learned the community temperature reading, or CTR for short. With that skill, I receive the love of God by using my God-given power and voice to express, for example, my preferences and hopes and wishes. But I'm also giving the love of God by avoiding judgments and checking out puzzles and now taking responsibility for my complaints or things I don't like. In this session, you will actually be taught two skills: stop mind reading and clarify expectations. They both revolve around eliminating assumptions that create confusion and pain, both for yourself and in your relationships. They're simple skills and profoundly practical. These two skills are based on the 9th commandment from Exodus 20. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. When you and I make assumptions about others without checking them out, it's easy to start telling ourselves stories about them in our heads that aren't true. We are bearing false witness in our own thoughts, and this is very damaging to relationships. The first skill, called stop mind reading, is to clarify what another person is thinking rather than assuming you know. It's a skill that can be used anywhere, anytime that I become aware that I'm making assumptions that I have not checked out.
Some Christians get offended at the title of this skill, stop mind reading, because God condemns mind reading in the Old Testament. But that's actually why we call it that. This is the last thing people like us should be involved in. For example, on my days off from church, I used to think, I'm so tired, I'd love to take a nap. But in my mind, I would think to myself, if I take a nap, Jerry's going to be upset. And I just assumed it was important to her that I take advantage of every spare minute on that day to get tasks done on the house. So when I finally learned this skill, I asked her, Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
Sure.
And I said, Jerry, is it true that if I take a nap on my day off, that you're going to be upset with me because I'm not getting things done around the house?
No, not at all.
Well, her response made me realize, oh my gosh, I've lost years of naps. So as you saw in your short Bible study, the goal of the book of Proverbs is that we mature from being fools into wise people. As Proverbs 18:15 says, the heart of the discerning or wise acquires knowledge. The ears of the wise seek it out. In other words, we seek to live in truth because we can't build Jesus' kingdom on lies, whether it be in the church, our families, or our places of work.
I have an example where a young woman came to me about how she recently used this skill. She told me she assumed her friend would be upset with her for wanting to reschedule a dinner date. But this time she decided she wasn't going to mind read. So she called her friend and said, I'd like to check out an assumption with you. I'd like to reschedule our dinner date, but I think you'll be upset with me if I do. Is that correct? Her friend said to her, no, I'm actually relieved. I've had a stressful week and it would be better for me to reschedule as well. So you can see how we can begin to tell ourselves stories that just aren't true when we make assumptions. How many times have you laid in bed at night replaying some interaction you had during the day, and you begin making assumptions about it or the person? We automatically start negatively interpreting what happened or what was said without checking it out. And we lose sleep all over an assumption. You've heard the Bible verse, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Well, I want to say, don't let the sun go down on your assumptions.
The principle is simple. Never assume you know what a person is thinking or feeling. Here's how the skill works. Reflect on something you assume someone thinks or feels, but has not actually told you. Then you ask them, may I have permission to read your mind? When permission is granted, you say, I think that you think. Is that correct? Or you can say it this way. Can I check out an assumption that I have? I'm wondering. Is that correct? Here's an example of what we mean. Let me try this out now, live, with Jerry. Jerry, may I have permission to read your mind?
Yes, you may.
I think you think that I'm responsible to buy our next car, sell our old car, our brown Chevy, get the plates onto the new car, decide where we're going to buy it, how much it's going to cost, and get it all ready, and then basically hand it to you. Is that correct?
No, I don't think you're responsible for all those pieces. And yeah, let's break it down and talk about it because I definitely want to be involved in some of that. So no, you're not responsible for all that. I don't think you are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I have permission to read your mind?
Sure.
Okay. So this week, we have to apply for the lottery for Zion National Park. And I think that you think that that's my responsibility. Is that correct?
It has been in the past, but no, I actually do not, and have it written down in my calendar as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm so impressed. Thank you, honey.
All right. Now we're going to show you a vignette of the wrong way of how these situations are usually handled, and then the right way to integrate the skill of stop mind reading. And then you'll turn in your workbooks and you'll follow the instructions so you can do this skill of stop mind reading yourself.
So, Samantha, I know that usually we, spend time together on Saturdays, just the two of us. And since it's Saturday tonight, I know you probably have something you want to do. So, what do you want to do?
Why do you sound so dejected? Is something bothering you?
No. Do you think something's bothering me?
Look, Jason, if you don't want to go out, we can stay in and watch a movie.
Sure. Fine. Yeah, movie sounds great, I guess.
Okay, seriously, what is wrong?
Nothing's wrong. You know I love a movie, and you know I love hanging out with you. You know what? It's really not that big of a deal. We can watch a movie tonight. It's fine. So, Samantha, I know that on Saturdays we usually spend time together, and it's really important for us to spend time together, but I was wondering if we could talk about tonight.
Sure, what do you want to talk about?
I was wondering if I could check out an assumption with you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So, before we were married, you know how I would hang out with my friends and we'd watch the basketball game? Well, I'm wondering if you'll think I think less of you than my friends if, I choose to skip out on tonight. Is that correct?
No, absolutely not. I know that you love me, and I think it's really healthy for you to hang out with your friends. And honestly, there's gonna be nights where I need to hang out with mine too.
Okay, great. You have no idea how worried I was to talk to you about this.
Well, I'm glad you did.
You're the best.
Assumptions bring so much unnecessary pain to relationships. That's why we actually have 3 different ways of getting at our assumptions. The first was last week in the community temperature reading through the word puzzles. Secondly, we just learned in the skill stop mind reading another way to get at it. Now this third one is through the skill clarify expectations. This skill helps us recognize what expectations we have a right to and how to clarify our expectations with others. Listen, people quit their jobs over unmet expectations. Churches split over unmet expectations. Couples divorce over unmet expectations. Families stop talking to one another over unmet expectations. Friends do the same.
All of us grew up taking in thousands upon thousands of messages around expectations. These messages came from our families, our cultures, TV, social media, schools, friends, even fairy tales. Think for a moment just about the area of marriage. What expectations about marriage did you receive from your family? Maybe something like wives will be in charge of the house and husbands pay bills. Or from fairy tales, you'll live happily ever after. Or from love songs, romance and love come naturally and you don't have to work at it. Holidays and birthdays also come with a lot of expectations. Here's a list of expectations about Christmas that we've collected from people. We'll buy each other gifts of equal value. When we gather this year, everyone will get along. No one will get out of hand. Every Christmas, children will be grateful and well-behaved. Guests will bring food. Everyone will help clean up. As you think about those expectations, what do you notice? Some may be unrealistic, like everyone will get along and there will be no tension, especially if for the last 7 years there has been tension and conflict between Uncle John and Aunt Mary. Then it's unrealistic to expect that it's not going to happen this year. How about buying each other gifts of equal value? You didn't even know you had an expectation around money spent on gifts until you gave a $100 gift and you received a $20 gift. Sometimes we're not even conscious of our expectations until we get disappointed. And finally, you just assumed everyone would offer to bring food without you having to ask them, but they didn't. And now it's last minute and you have to cook the whole meal by yourself. So sometimes our expectations are unspoken. So there are actually 4 problems with expectations. First, they're a problem when they're unconscious. Sometimes we have expectations we didn't even know we had until we're disappointed.
So for example, I expected all of our children to be straight A students until one of my daughters started getting B's and C's. I wasn't even aware I had that expectation. I wasn't conscious of it until it actually happened, and then I was disappointed.
Yeah, and early in our marriage, I had no idea that I expected Pete to work around the house the way my dad did when I was growing up. And when he wasn't fixing things on his day off, I was annoyed. I'm thinking to myself, isn't this his job? So sometimes we're not even conscious of our expectations until we're disappointed. Secondly, the problem with expectations is when they're unrealistic. Sometimes we have expectations that aren't reasonable, or there's no evidence to support that it can or will happen. Here are some examples. My small group will end on time this week, even though it never has. Those close to me will make my birthday special, even though in past years they haven't. Someone told me recently that when they text their friend, they expect them to text back immediately. And I asked, well, what's immediately? And she said, 30 seconds. And I said, that's probably unrealistic. Thirdly, expectations are a problem when they're unspoken. Many times our expectations are actually never said out loud. For example, each of your colleagues will remove their food from the office refrigerator at the end of the week. Or the extended family will help in paying for the grandparents' anniversary party. Or all leaders will attend prayer meetings. Now, if you're telling yourself they should just know, that's a lie from the pit of hell. We cannot expect people to read our minds. Expectations must be spoken. Finally, expectations are a problem when they are unagreed upon. Very often, I have expectations of others that they have never agreed to, or people have expectations of me I've never agreed to. Just because you invited your son and his girlfriend for dinner doesn't mean you can expect they will or should come. or just because you ask a friend for a ride doesn't mean they will do it or have to do it. I also realized I had expectations of people they didn't agree to. I'd speak my expectations, for instance, in an email to church volunteers to be at an event we were hosting 30 minutes before it was about to begin. Then I was shocked when they arrived 30 minutes after the event began. I later realized, although I had spoken via an email the expectation, they actually never agreed that they would or could come 30 minutes early. Think with me for a moment of the countless expectations around workplaces. Things like overtime, co-worker birthdays, or who cleans out the staff refrigerator. Expectations around home and family. Do I buy birthday presents for my brother's children? How often should I call my mom or dad? Do I go to the family Christmas party since I'm expected to? Or how about expectations around neighbors? There are expectations about loud music after certain hours, barking dogs, teenagers' friends taking food from the refrigerator without asking. And then expectations at church. The pastor will return my phone calls within 24 hours. The church will help me parent my teenage sons. I will hang out with people in my small group on weekends.
Here's the million-dollar question. What expectations do we have a right to, and what expectations don't we have a right to? This skill helps us to distinguish between these two things. What is a valid expectation and what is an invalid expectation? Sometimes we don't even know we have an expectation until we're angry or disappointed. That's why a lack of clarity about expectations can be like stepping on a landmine. Suddenly you're in the midst of the fallout and pain of a strained relationship.
So let's be clear about what makes an expectation valid. There are 4 criteria. First, expectations must be conscious. That is, I'm aware of my expectation. Secondly, they must be realistic. That means there's evidence to support the expectation is reasonable of me or someone else. Either it has been done in the past or the person has the capacity and willingness to do it. I want to make a special note here. The reason this is so important is that unrealistic expectations are a leading cause of depression. Disappointment can make the heart sick, literally, as Proverbs says, when something doesn't happen you were expecting. So when it comes to work projects or ministry experiences or family gatherings and friendships, you have to really think about whether your expectations are realistic or not. Thirdly, expectations must be spoken. That is, I have expressed the expectation clearly. And then finally, expectations have to be agreed upon. The other person has agreed to the expectation by saying yes. So here's the principle. An expectation is only valid when mutually agreed upon. Let me repeat that since it's so important. An expectation is only valid when mutually agreed upon.
Now, before we send you off to practice the skill, I want to mention a few exceptions to the agreed upon criteria. As our children's authority figure, as parents, for example, we don't need their agreement before we ask them to do household chores. In work, where there is an employer-employee contract, there's already an overall agreement. It's built into the marriage vow as well, expectations that you will not flirt and that you'll be faithful to love your spouse for the rest of your life. Now, before we have you practice this skill, we want to show you a vignette of the wrong way and then the right way of clarifying an expectation. Then we ask you to go to your workbook and follow the instructions to practice clarifying expectations yourself.
Okay, Mom, I think we're all set.
Oh, honey, it's been so good having you home for Thanksgiving. We're both glad you're able to make the trip.
Me too. This has been a lot of fun.
That's good. So I was thinking when you were back for the week of Christmas, your sister will be coming in, and both your cousins are able to make it too. And you know how much fun you have when you're all together. So I was thinking we should try out that new Thai restaurant that just opened. And you know how much we love ice skating. I think we should spend an afternoon at the ice rink. And I was also thinking that there's a new movie that's opening up that your dad was talking about. We could have a day to fit that in since you'll be home for the whole Christmas week.
But Mom, we never said the whole week.
Oh, honey, it'll be great.
But Mom, I have a whole vacation in New York planned with my friends for part of Christmas week.
Oh, but it's nothing definite, right? Just tell me you can't go.
Mom. All right, Mom, I'm all set.
Oh, it's been so good having you home for Thanksgiving. We're both so glad you were able to make the trip.
Me too. This has been a lot of fun.
So listen, before you leave, I was wondering if we could have a quick conversation about Christmas.
Sure, my flight isn't leaving for a bit, so I have a little time.
Good. I realize that I have some expectations of you about Christmas, and I just thought we could take a moment to clarify those expectations.
Sure, let's talk about it.
Well, as I mentioned earlier this week, your sister would be coming in for Christmas. I just found out that both your cousins are able to come in for the week of Christmas as well.
That's awesome.
It is, but then I realized that, well, since your sister and your cousin would be here for that week, I just assumed that you would want to be here for that week as well. But then I also realized that I never shared with you those expectations, and you never agreed to it, coming home for the week of Christmas. But do you think that's something you can do?
Gosh, Mom, that might be a little difficult.
How come?
Well, my friends and I were planning to go to New York for pretty much that part of Christmas. You know, and since I have this massive project at work that has been taking a lot of my time and a lot of my energy, I was really looking forward to this trip for a while. But I'll be here for Christmas, and I'm looking forward to that as well.
Well, I had no idea. And I didn't realize that your work project was taking up so much of your time. And you have been wanting to spend time with your college friends. I guess I was just so excited that everyone would be here all together for that week.
Well, listen, Mom. I know that being together with the family and our cousins is really important. So let me have a little chat with my friends about logistics. Maybe I can spend a few days here and then meet up with them later. I'll let you know what I can agree to, but let me talk to them first and figure out the commitment around our rental agreement.
Okay, sure. That sounds like a good plan. I'm glad we were able to clarify that. That was huge. Oh, have a good trip.
All right, thanks. Bye.
In closing, it is important to mention that not all unmet expectations have the same level of disappointment. Some disappointments are small, others medium, and others very large. This skill, clarify expectations, is used for small and medium-sized expectations, not large or very large expectations around very significant disappointments such as, I never expected to get divorced, or I never expected to lose my job or have a special needs child. These type of large unmet expectations result in deep, deep disappointment, and they deserve their own space for grieving. Nonetheless, learning this skill truly has the capacity to significantly change your life, as making assumptions are the source of much preventable pain in our relationships. Clarifying expectations is foundational for creating a healthy culture, whether it be in a church, a family, a marriage, a workplace, friendships, a team, a ministry, and I could go on and on. The key is that you practice this skill until it becomes second nature to you. You will find that many issues are resolved by simply clarifying expectations around them. Others, however, require negotiation to solve them. And this will be covered in session 7 with the skill we call clean fighting.
Let me address 3 common questions. The first is, what do I do when someone cannot meet my expectation? Now, this happens a lot. So, for example, you and your sister have had a mutual expectation to go on vacation together for the last 10 years. Now she has changed her mind due to a new job and a serious boyfriend. So what do? You grieve the loss and accept her decision. So now you turn your expectation into a hope that someday she may change her mind or her life situation changes. A second common question that comes up is, what do I do if I have an agreed upon expectation with someone and then they don't do it? Perhaps they said yes because they were afraid to say no to you. Remember that if a person cannot say no to you, then what you have is not an expectation, but a demand. Maybe it wasn't clear enough. You may need to go back to clarify the issue again. Or maybe they thought they could do it and later realized they couldn't. You will need to explore the reasons. A third question is often, what do I do if God doesn't meet my expectations? You can rest assured that God often will not. We like to know where God is going, what He is doing, how we're going to get there, and when we will arrive. So often we try to take charge of God and control the way life unfolds, and we end up making Him our servant. We make a deal with God that goes like this: I'll obey you and keep my side of the bargain, and you will bless me and not allow any serious suffering in my life. God is knowable, having revealed Himself in Jesus Christ and in Scripture, but He's also unknowable. That is, He's utterly above us and transcendent, with thoughts and plans that are far above ours. Most of the time, we have no idea what God's doing. That's why Augustine wrote, if you understand, it's not God you understand. And that's why learning to spend time with God each week through the Emotionally Healthy Relationships Day by Day book is so essential to the course. The rhythm of meeting with God twice a day and seeking to do silence and stillness is meant to help us surrender our will and our plans to Him. Each day we stop to be with Jesus, we are declaring, I need you. It's an act of humility. So this week, go to chapter 2 on Stop Mind Reading and Clarify Expectations in your day-to-day devotional. And also, before your next meeting, we ask you to practice the Stop Mind Reading skill and the Clarify Expectations skill at least twice each. Set aside time when you can think about any assumptions or mind reading that you might be engaging in. Session 3 next week is called Genogram Your Family. You'll be looking at your family going back 3 to 4 generations. So please don't forget the pre-reading in your workbook before that session. So thanks. And now as we close this session, may God fill you with His power that you might become what the book of Proverbs calls a wise, discerning person who gives thought to their ways and loves the world well as a result.